So let me take you back to the year 1845, to a school in Latvia. Something really weird happened there. They say it all started when a new teacher was hired. Her name was Emily Sagi. People began to notice that there was something off about her. They claimed to have seen her in 2 different places at the exact same time. That's crazy, right? This is a story that's full of mystery, and we can't help but wonder, do we all have a doppelganger? Hi folks, I'm Johnny and welcome to The Oddest. We've all heard of the phrase spitting image as it refers to someone else's identical double. It's fun if you ever come across someone that looks like someone you know. It's uncanny and unsettling sometimes. But what happens when this doppelganger appears to be something else? Have you ever heard the term doppelganger? It's a German word that means double walker. Now, don't get it mixed up with the idea of a dead ringer. A dead ringer is someone who looks exactly like you, but they're a living person. Doppelgangers, on the other hand, are something else entirely. They are your double, but they lead a different life, and you've probably never met them before. Can you imagine how it would feel to suddenly run into someone who looks exactly like you, but who you had no idea existed? It's the kind of experience that would take your breath away. Believe it or not, it's highly probable that each of us has at least one lookalike out there. With over 7 billion people in this world, it's more likely that we actually have several. Even though there's a wide variety of physical features and traits amongst humans, those features and traits can only be arranged in a limited number of ways. So it's inevitable that some combinations of these features will eventually repeat. Dead ringers might seem interesting, but they're really just a coincidence when you think about it. Unlike dead ringers, doppelgangers are a whole different ballgame. They're not just similar to someone in appearance, they're an exact carbon copy of them. It's like they're emulating the person, or perhaps there's some sort of ghostly reflection. The thing is, if you ever happen to see your doppelganger, you better watch out because it's considered as an extremely bad sign. It's believed to be an omen of impending doom. So, if you see your doppelganger walking down the street, you might just want to turn around and head in the other direction as fast as you can. Now, let me tell you about some of the people who have claimed to have seen their doppelgangers and then died shortly afterwards. One of the most famous cases in history was that of Emily Sagi. So, she was a 32-year-old teacher from France who had taught at many schools in her home country. However, in 1845 she decided to travel to Latvia and take up a teaching position at an exclusive all-girls school called Pensionat von Nieuwelk. Emily was a hit with the students at Pensionat von Nieuwelk, but the school board was worried about her spotty employment history. She had taught at 19 different schools in only 16 years, and they were concerned that she would just leave again and leave them with another vacancy to fill. However, just weeks after she started working at the school, things took a shocking turn. They soon realised the unfortunate truth that no one wanted to hire her. Strange things began to happen around her, and even though she never saw her doppelganger, everyone else did. The first time Emily's ghostly twin appeared, she was teaching a class of 13 students. As she stood with her back to the room writing on the chalkboard, another Emily suddenly appeared right beside her. This double mimicked her every movement, without any awareness of its surroundings or what was happening in the room. The students were shocked by what they saw, but when they told others, nobody really believed them. Well, at least not at first. As Emily sat alone in the school hall enjoying her lunch, it happened again. A ghostly figure appeared out of thin air right behind her. The few people who were there at the time were startled and concerned. As for Emily, well, she was completely oblivious to the apparition. The strange thing was that the ghostly figure mimicked Emily's every movement, even though it didn't have any food in its hands. Emily would later recall that she seemed exhausted whenever this happened, but at the time she had no idea what was going on. As days went by, the appearance of Emily's doppelganger grew more and more frequent, and it started to move around more freely. It was as if it had a mind of its own, behaving differently from Emily at times. One day, Emily asked a colleague to cover her class while she tended to some of her students' gardening needs. But when she returned to her classroom, her stand-in teacher noticed something strange. The real Emily was still outside, working in the garden. But there was another Emily in the classroom, silently watching the students from her seat. The students were perplexed by the doppelganger's presence as it sat motionless, just watching them intently. The entire classroom were looking at Miss Sagi sitting in her seat, then flicking their heads to the left to look out the window, and there was Miss Sagi outside with other students. Emily insisted that she had been outside the whole time, but school officials noted that at the exact moment when her doppelganger was spotted in the classroom, Emily had expressed a desire or a wish to be back indoors, teaching her sewing class instead of working outside in the garden. Despite the eerie sightings, a few brave students eventually gathered the courage to approach the ghostly figure. They reported that when they tried to touch it, their hands were met with a strange resistance, as if the air around the figure had turned into a thick fabric. So, there was this doppelganger that ended up sticking around the school for good. Emily had to deal with it constantly, causing confusion and downright scaring the students. A bunch of angry parents ended up complaining, which ultimately led to Miss Sagi being asked to leave. Now, I know all this sounds pretty wild, but believe it or not, this kind of thing has happened to some pretty big names throughout history. It's not as uncommon as you might think. Abraham Lincoln once claimed to have seen his own doppelganger. Apparently, it happened right after he got elected to his first term. He was just chilling on the couch, trying to catch a quick nap, when he happened to glance over at a mirror. To his surprise, he saw not one, but two faces staring back at him. Both of them were his own, but the second face looked different. It looked sickly and ghostly pale. When Lincoln told his wife about this bizarre vision, she got really spooked. She thought that it was an omen. It was a sign that her husband would get elected twice, but would die during his second term as president. Sure enough, Lincoln was assassinated shortly after being elected for his second term. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. You might have heard of him. He was this famous German writer, poet and politician, right? Anyway, one summer's day back in 1775, he was out for a ride when he saw this strange guy coming towards him on the path. And get this, the guy looked just like him, but they were both wearing different outfits. It totally spooked Goethe out. Fast forward 8 years and Goethe is out for another ride, going in the opposite direction, when he suddenly realises that he's on the same path where he saw his doppelganger before. And to make things even freakier, he's wearing the exact same clothes as the stranger was all those years ago. Back in 1796, Catherine the Great, you know, the Russian empress, was asleep in her chambers when her servants came running in all freaked out. They claimed that they had just seen her walk right into the throne room, which was super weird since she had been in bed for 3 hours already. Catherine was intrigued, so she decided to go and check it out for herself. When she got there, she saw her own doppelganger just chilling on the throne, like it owned the place. She freaked out and ordered her guards to shoot at the thing, but their guns had no effect. Eventually the doppelganger just vanished into thin air, and not long after that, Catherine the Great died. So there was this 16th century English poet named John Donne. He was known for writing about deep metaphysical stuff. And get this, he claimed that while he was in Paris, he saw his wife's doppelganger. She was holding a baby, but it was a bad omen. You see, his wife was pregnant at the time back home, and when the doppelganger appeared, she had just given birth to a stillborn child. This story first showed up in a biography of Donne that was published over 40 years after he died. One of his friends, a writer named Isaac Walton, also told a similar story about Donne, but some scholars aren't sure if either of the accounts are true, because there are some important details that just don't match up. In the Victorian era, there was a story about Vice Admiral Sir George Tyrone that people still talk about today. This story goes that he appeared in the drawing room of his family home back in London, during a party being thrown by his wife. He walked right through the room without speaking to anyone and seemed to be looking straight ahead. But here's the kicker. Tyrone was supposed to be commanding a ship off the coast of Syria at that time, and it turns out that very same night that he appeared in the drawing room, his ship, the HMS Victoria, sank after colliding with another ship the HMS Camperdown. Many believe that his appearance was actually his doppelganger and that it was a warning of his imminent death. It's quite surprising to know that doppelgangers are not as uncommon as one would think. There are plenty of well-known cases involving celebrities and other public figures that have been documented throughout history. And there are also many more mundane occurrences. In fact, it's entirely possible that you may have seen or even interacted with someone's doppelganger without even realising it. The phenomenon of doppelgangers continue to fascinate and intrigue people to this very day. So, what exactly are doppelgangers? I mean, that's the million-dollar question, right? Unfortunately, there's no straightforward answer. They're just another strange phenomenon to add to the long list of unexplained occurrences that we've witnessed in this amazing world that we live in. As with any other mysterious phenomena, people have speculated and expressed skepticism about doppelgangers. There are plenty of theories floating around these mysterious entities, but one seems to stand out amongst the rest. Some people believe that they're astral projections, physical embodiments of our thoughts and desires that are so strong that they manifest into the real world. This might explain what Emily Sagi experienced with her doppelganger, which always seemed to mirror her every thought and action. But who knows, maybe there are other explanations out there waiting to be discovered. Remember I mentioned Goethe? Well, he had an experience that suggested something pretty wild, a crossover between different realities and timelines. And it seems like he's not the only one. Plenty of people these days report similar occurrences. Some folks even think that the Mandela effect might be behind all this, suggesting that these apparitions could be the result of glitches in the Matrix or a peek into another reality altogether. There's a lot of variation in the accounts that people have given of their experiences with these things. Some folks say they were able to have full-on conversations with their doppelgangers, whilst others swear that these apparitions didn't seem to have any awareness of their surroundings at all. In demonology, there are certain parasitic spirits known for their ability to impersonate anyone, even their hosts. That's led to some people to wonder whether the more intelligent and interactive doppelgangers might actually be demons in disguise. But hey, let's not jump to conclusions, okay? There's another theory out there that suggests that these doppelgangers could actually be the embodiment of one's higher self, here to offer guidance and advice. It's worth noting though that there have been quite a few cases where people have died soon after seeing their doppelganger. That's a pretty eerie coincidence, and some scientists have even done research to explore this phenomenon. One study found that when certain areas of the brain were stimulated, participants felt like they were standing in the same room as an external version of themselves. It's possible that the natural stimulation of these areas through injury, illness, or a chemical imbalance could cause someone to hallucinate and see their doppelganger. And if these underlying conditions were serious enough, they could even end up causing the person's death, which might explain why there's such a strong stigma around these apparitions. With all the doppelganger accounts recorded over the years, it's tough to completely dismiss their existence. At the same time though, there are so many differences between people's experiences that it's hard to pin down exactly what these apparitions are or what they're after. All I know is, when you go into the bathroom tonight and splash water on your face or brush your teeth, when you take that one last look in the mirror, you'd better hope that it's only your own reflection staring back at you. Who knows what else might be lurking in the shadows. Ah! That's this video come to an end. As always, I'm eternally grateful for all of you folks out there that even want to watch my content. I'm going for a cup of tea. I hope you're all well and safe, get a good night's sleep, and remember, keep smiling.